freezing outside, I better not cry. The seahorse is out, I'm telling you why.
Okay, so perhaps we won't talk about the last time you saw us. Let's talk about the last time you saw us with one of our boats. It was Pepsi, our National 12. Well, today is the first chance we get to sail her. It's the New Year's Day race at Wilsonian Sailing Club. Unfortunately, the weather was atrocious. Even though we've had gale force winds the night before and gale force winds the night after the race itself had little or no wind, and it was chucking it down with rain. And the lighting was terrible, none of which really goes together to make a good film. But anyway, this is what happened.
We're not going to get to do much sailing, and Hannah doesn't get to do much anyway. What we should do is enjoy the odd bit of sailing we get to do. And then when we thought about that, the boat we've had the most fun in is a National 12.
Well, hello, it's New Year's Day, 11 o'clock in the morning. It's chucking it down. Really light wind, I don't think there's any wind. Ooh, I don't know what we're going to do. We're launching from Medway because the boat's been here at the moment, and then we're going to try and get to the Wilsonian start line. I don't even know if they're start racing this at the moment. I don't even know if we have a paddle. I've got raindrop right on my nose. God, really bad. Oh, I didn't drink that much last night. Oh well. So there is my Ian sorting the boat out, and look, she's right next to Seahorse. Seahorse with her baby sister, Pepsi. And the lovely Steve very kindly said he'd film the start for us, but he's probably getting wetter than he thought he would be. Where has he gone? I don't know. He's gone to do something, and then he'll be filming the start for us, and then going home. Oh, is it? Okay.
So as I expect, you can already tell, there really wasn't very much in the way of wind. And when you combine this with a particularly high tide that had just turned, plus all the rain we've had over the last few days was flooding out down the river at the same time, you had to do 2 knots just to stay still. So I think we can be forgiven for the bit of pumping we're having to do just to maintain our position. Everyone else taking part decided to stay on the beach. Strictly speaking, of course, none of these things are legal, but you don't really take the New Year's Day race that seriously.
I said I'm 18 already. Does the boat look good? Yes.
So the course was to be a figure of 8 lapping course set broadly speaking in front of the club. The start would be downwind with the tide to the furthest mark on the course at the entrance to Hoo Creek. This was fortunate mainly because of the going with the tide bit, because let's face it, in the conditions you can see here, there's no way anyone was going to go very far against it. And by the time we'd get down to that leeward mark, we'd have cleared St Mary's Island, so what little wind there was could find its way to us and give us half a chance to start the beat back. So this first downwind stroke reaching leg pretty much turned into a beat, because the only real wind we had was the apparent wind generated by getting swept along by the tide. So we thought we'd done the clever thing by staying out in the river while everyone else was sitting on the beach, because we thought we'd be in more tide. But as it turned out, those closer to the shore would get the better of it and would start pulling away from us. So it was around this point that we actually did start to get some true wind, which was meant to be coming out the south. And with our, what was, windward position, it gave us some leverage over the rest of the fleet and allowed us to pretty much sail straight to this first mark, where everyone else was forced to tack and give up a lot of that ground they'd gained. As you can see, you don't sit still in a 12. And although it's been some time since we've been in one, we both agreed it seemed to come back to us reasonably quickly. Although I'm sure there's a long way to go before we'll ever feel like we've got the hang of it again. But it was a good start. So the wind coming back allowed us to get in front, and we were the first to this first mark. So as you can tell, The wind coming brought with it the rain, and that would turn what was a really gloomy day into actually quite a miserable one. So unfortunately, although we're only 2 marks into a 4-mark course, and there'd be 4 laps of that course, the rain pretty much stopped us filming much else. Steve, who was doing a great job filming from on the water, couldn't get his camera out for fear of damaging it, and the cameras we had strapped to the boat, well, you couldn't see much because of the water on the lenses. Suffice it to say, our lead didn't last that long. We made the mistake, although it seemed like the right thing to do at the time, of going inshore in a minute to try and keep out the tide. Had we had time to remember the start, where everyone inshore seemed to get more tide than those out in the river, we might have thought twice about it. But sure enough, there was no wind and more tide, and we lost a heap of places. But we didn't make that mistake on subsequent laps, and ended up finishing the race 3rd on the water, but 2nd overall on handicap. Which for the first time, getting the boat wet, and the first time Hannah and I have sailed a 12 in a long time, is a pretty good result. And we really enjoyed what was otherwise a pretty miserable day.